Welcome back to the Nature of Empathy in Teams. I am your host, Taylor Brown. And like always, we're going to talk to one of our very own Longhorn leaders on the topic of the nature of empathy in team leadership. Our guest today is David Pierce. David is the coach of the UT baseball team, and he has been with the team for the past 4 years. Back in 2018, David was named by Baseball America as the National Head Coach of the Year after he led the team back to the College World Series for the first time since 2014. David, it's an honor to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Taylor, thank you for having me. It's always kind of cool when you hear an introduction, but it's so many other people that are involved in that, the piece. So this is my 4th season, but my 31st season in coaching and teaching, and just so many great players and great coaches that I've worked with, played for, worked for. It's just been a real honor to be a part of the University of Texas for 3 full seasons, and then of course a shortened 4th season. So things are well. Thank you.
So you've had a long career in college sport. I'm just kind of wondering, in your 31 years, is this one of the greatest challenges that you faced when it comes to leading a team?
Man, that is right on, because there's a lot of predictions you can make starting into a early fall. Your preparation, we're a spring sport, so your preparation goes throughout the fall, and there's segments and phases that we go through in preparation for competition. And once you get into competition, that's the piece that we all create, that adrenaline. That's why we coach. That's why we play. We used to play to get the adrenaline, and then our careers end. And so now, hopefully, we get to pass some of that on to our players, but we still get that adrenaline. And this is what you work towards. And so it's very difficult when everything seems to be in place and you've got just a great group of coaches and support staff, and especially players, and then abruptly just taken from you. So it's been a very different, challenging approach, as opposed to dropping a game, or having a rain out, or dealing with an umpire call, or an injury. It's really on a bigger stage, and that's really how we're perceiving it, and trying to lead, not only from a baseball coach perspective or a person in leadership, but really from a worldwide perspective, where we can share some of this stuff with our players and understand that there's things that we can do in our own environment to make the place a better world, and also just to be a part of this cure and getting back to normal.
How do you view yourself in the baseball community as a leader and an influencer in this space? As you were just kind of mentioning, you have this wider responsibility kind of in the sports and baseball community. What are your thoughts on that personally?
It's interesting, because I'm not a politician, and I'm not interested in that. I'm very interested in what happens, not only locally, but nationwide and worldwide. But as far as my role, I feel like it's important that I lead by example. And I think it's important that we quarantine and we do the things that our government is helping us do. And then we basically try to relay that to the people that are with our program, from support staff to coaches to players. And I think young people have a hard time with it, especially staying with it. Right now, we're having some soft openings, and these soft openings are becoming, seems like, more and more engaging. And I think that's the caution that we have to take. So it's just my job to kind of feed information. Also try to be somewhat creative of how we're communicating with our team. It's very interesting the way this went down, because we had just finished a ball game against Abilene Christian on a Wednesday, and getting ready to play our last non-conference series against University of New Mexico. And we're at practice on Thursday. And we were told we were going to have to shut down for a couple of weeks from March 14th, I believe, till March 29th. And so we immediately shift gears to how we're going to handle our pitching, how we're going to handle our practice settings, because we were still eligible to do that. And within that day of practice, we found out the College World Series was going to be denied. They canceled it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not until June. So we either thought, well, there's something going on that they're not telling us and we don't know enough about, or there's definitely something bigger than what we're experiencing in our practice today.
Right.
And so when you look at empathizing with the team, I think that moment was a moment to really be there for our players, because we've got a lot of players that have had great success, but also just have put in so much time as a student, but also as a student athlete, and the morning workouts and all the things that they prepare for to get to that point. We're 14-3 at the time. Things are going really well for the team. And it just emotionally affected our guys, especially some of our older guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so we stopped practice. We brought them in the dugout and really just tried to be there for them. And you know, I don't think you can really do that until you've built a trust, until you've built a foundation where now you can be empathetic with your team. And I think that's a big piece of how you can utilize empathy in your program, but it's also an emotion that's a part of, or a process that's also a part of other pieces. I don't think you can just lean on that one way as you can maybe another method. So it's just real critical. But at the time, it was a no-brainer that we had to stop practice. We had to discuss it, mm-hmm. and then see what the future held.
Sure. So you have some senior leadership on your team, and how have you seen them react to this situation, and how have they led some of the younger guys through, even when they're not in close proximity? What are some of the things they've been doing to lead through this situation?
Well, first of all, probably the first week we're somewhat in limbo trying to figure out the process. I wish I had invested in some Zoom. But then once we started getting into the Zoom calls, then we broke into segments of hitters and segments of pitchers and then the middle game. And so we're actually coaching some things, but you got to be careful too of just being stagnant and just doing it for eyewash and just doing it because you feel like it's the most important thing that you teach. Us being in season now and off season, knowing that we don't know the unknown. We're not sure what we're preparing for. Are we going to play summer ball? Are we going to be preparing for fall baseball again, which is all season? We know we're out of the in season, the competitive period. So our preparation is interesting. So we basically went from team settings to individual settings, and then our team has a group that they communicate with each other. And so we take those leaders and try to communicate information to them of, hey, just make sure that those young guys are okay. Just make sure you're putting your arm around them. Make sure that there's communication, and we've tried to do the same. But it's just been so much of the unknown. I just think that our seniors and juniors, our upperclassmen, have built this foundation of our expectations and their growth and their development that they kind of know what's next. You know, we talk a lot about culture. In all sport, you talk about culture this, culture that. For me, culture is about the people that are involved in your program, and really whatever our message is, them delivering that message. And I think through their development, they've done a wonderful job of just being an extension of our coaching staff. And when you get that, then you have a team that's being ran by your clubhouse. And when your clubhouse is running the team, then there's accountability and it's being policed by each other. And then that allows us to really get down to preparation. So I just think they've been great. They're mature. They're going to get their year back. We may get them back, and we're hopeful that we do get them back. So we'll see.
You mentioned a little bit about athlete development and the expectations of their development. Over the course of 4 years, and when you're developing an athlete, how does empathy come into play with developing different athletes at different paces, or taking different approaches? Is there any way that empathy, being able to see things from their perspective, is an important component of developing athletes, or I guess maybe even assistant coaches in that way?
Well, first of all, our players are very smart. I don't think you can go in and try to um, give them information that's not valid. Um, so I think the key is the foundation. If we can build a foundation of dealing with different types of emotions, we deal with a lot of adversity.
Mm-hmm.
It could be the weather. It could be travel. It could be a class schedule. It could be an umpire's call. It could be health. So we deal with so many adversities. We deal with confidence or lack of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
We deal with things that I think build you to become a young man that's learning day to day from the game of baseball. Because the game of baseball and life have so much in common. And what's really cool about it is you can learn so much from the game if you just sometimes shut up and pay attention. And it's really critical that you do. So what we want to try to do is build this foundation to be able to cope with that. So it goes from putting guys in adverse situations of a morning workout at 5:30 in the morning, to breakfast, to class, to back to training, to then going to back to their dorms or apartments and preparing for the next day. And so we really try to teach them to learn things from what's happened to them in the past,
Mm-hmm.
to really prepare for that future, and to really be in that moment. And it's very difficult for people, and especially today with social media and so many distractions, to really give yourself up to be in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And as we go through those types of processes and those strategies, we're looking at focal points. How do you slow the game down? Well, how do you slow your life down when things get out of control?
Mm-hmm.
So if we can build this foundation, then empathy also becomes a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're deserving of it at that time. I have a difficult time empathizing with somebody that's not doing all the preparation and creating their own type of routines to give them mechanisms to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're going through the process, then you can recognize when you need to put your arm around them, or you can recognize the time when you have to challenge them. And I think that's all about their growth, and that's kind of our approach day to day.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. So I'm talking to our Longhorn leaders, and one of the points of this is we think there's a lot of knowledge here, and as we go forward, I wonder if you have any advice or perspective for other leaders in the UT community that are leading teams, maybe not even sports, but other team leaders throughout the community during this time. If you have any wisdom for them that you could share.
Well, I mean, I think every situation's different, every environment's different, and so you have to understand your own environment. But the number one thing I would say is to be available, more so than ever. Be available for your folks. Be available. Like, we have a huge group message, a group meeting with all of our support staff, with our coaches and our players, and we constantly tell them, in the meeting or in the group, we constantly communicate anything we can do to help you. Make sure you reach out. If it's a position coach, if it's a trainer, maybe you're going through some issues at home with your workouts, your strength coach. So we have all these professionals that are very good at what they do. So the number one thing is I want all of them to be available, including myself. And if our kids can really feel comfortable contacting us in need, if it's, if there's something we have to do to help their families right now, there's a lot of people losing jobs and potentially struggling financially. So we've got to create a relationship and a trust that they feel comfortable reaching out to us. And that takes time. I don't think it's just something that happens. But I think if you can create that availability, and then I think you need to be creative of how you communicate with them. Like I said earlier, you can be very stagnant and almost doing some of these contacts and calls because of procedure. And I think it's more important to have some real content. Right now, we're having some guest speakers. We've had Joe Madden, the manager of the Anaheim Angels. We've had Andrew Friedman, the president of operations with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Mm-hmm. So just to give them some different information, but mainly so we can still see their face and we can put them on Zoom and we can see them and still have some dialogue with them. I think if they can just understand it like that, and then we can be available, and then try to really reach towards how can I be good today? Because we don't know really. We don't know if we're going to have any opportunity on the back end of summer to play ball or to go to class. And so if I can be good today and I've created a list and I've got a routine, then I'm going to stay relevant. And that's what I think is important for them, is to help them through. All right, don't worry about tomorrow yet. Let's just be good today. And then we'll get over to the next day and just have that mentality of preparation all the time.
Awesome. Yeah. It sounds like there's some real, there's some elements of mindfulness coming through there, of just being in the present moment, just being right here, right now, and doing the next right thing. I think that's
I mean, we talk a lot about, it's tough for people right now to stay positive. Mm-hmm. Positive is a piece, though. It's something that there's a day you're going to really be struggling, and it may be because you miss your teammates. It may be because of personal issues at home. But we've got to overcome that, and I think that's something through just creating a foundation where you learn toughness, you learn grit, you learn how to fight through things. And then once you get past them, boy, you're proud of yourself. And so it's not always just positive thinking, but sometimes it's just neutral thinking, where I can be able to understand that there's things happening around me that aren't so positive, but I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to get into that state of negativity. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to try to keep a mentality of moving forward.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, David, it's been an honor to have you. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives with us today. And I guess till next time, Hogan.
Longhorns, come see us. We'll see you at the ballpark soon, hopefully.
Hopefully. All right.
All right. See you, Taylor. Thank you.